town you never heard of. Hey everybody, welcome to the Common Folk Podcast with Ben, Morgan, and Andy.
All right, welcome back to Common Folk
Podcast for the people, by the people.
There it is. There
Yeah.
it is.
The radio boy coming through.
I got to be working on that radio voice because
Why?
I got football tomorrow, football Friday, and then a volleyball tournament. We're doing the third place and championship game on Saturday.
Dang.
So yeah, I gotta.
What happens when your voice goes out?
There's no such thing.
Okay.
It's happening.
Almost sound a little scratchy.
Well, we just got done recording the WTL last night.
Oh, yeah.
Like
you better
about 10
suck on
hours
some
ago.
throat lozenges or something. What are you doing? You're kind of like a singer.
No rest for the wicked. You
What
gotta
do
go.
the singers do? What do these celebrities do?
I heard like honey drops and tea, warm tea.
Honey.
but-
Yeah.
honey.
Definitely.
Do you ever tell your wife that you just you need to relax? Like, you just need to
Yeah.
go in the room.
Like, get off my back.
Like, be quiet. I need
Don't
my
talk
tea.
to me.
You deal with the kids.
I need my honey,
I know you've been
right.
at work all day, but
Yep.
you do this. I'll go over here.
I'm sure Ashley's going to go for that.
It's not your fault.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not me. Yeah, I just need time.
Okay.
So yeah, no, that doesn't always work out.
Well, good luck with that one.
Yeah, that's fun. All right, well, let's get into it, huh? What do you think?
Yeah. Well, we got a guest here. I'm really excited about.
So this one's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
We've had him scheduled a couple different times, not necessarily scheduled, but like some kind of pre-planning,
Right.
and then we had to change things, and now we've got him on. So the man, the myth, the legend among our circle here,
Yes.
Charles Barron. Welcome,
you guys.
welcome.
Glad we could make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's hard to find. I mean, God.
He's always moving.
Yeah.
Always moving.
So a couple of reasons why we wanted to have Charles on. Number one, to begin with, he's a co-founder of FBN, Farmers Business Network.
Yep.
Which has been around for a while, and we'll get into that, and then some of his roles today. But this organization, I personally had come across in probably about when Zach started working with you guys, so like 18, 19-ish.
Yeah.
When was the first Omaha
Oh, farmer
December?
to farmer. Yeah.
Farmer to farmer, yeah.
Well, the first time we did that was 2016.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the very first one, and then we did it in Omaha for 4 years before COVID,
Okay.
and then we went off for a couple years during COVID. Yeah.
Probably 2018, 2019, we started working with the Fast family, Tony Fast. And
Tony's great.
he was big with you guys, and he was talking about some of the things you guys were doing and showing us some of the videos and stuff, some of the original stuff back in the day with the influencers.
Yeah, Tony's awesome. I got to go out to Tony's farm probably about 5 or 6 years ago now.
Okay.
And, boy, if you've never gone out to that part of Montana,
Oh, yeah, it's awesome.
Pretty
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
I haven't been, but this guy's been able to
Hey.
go. Oh, and you're wearing their shirt.
Yeah.
Oh, you are, yeah.
He's living proof. Been there, done that.
That's right, yeah.
I didn't. Okay.
It's the kind of place where when you look out, there's not a fence as far as you can see.
That's true. Yeah.
It is just
Yeah.
wide open country.
And also, it's kind of like an outdoorsman's paradise, because you are out there in the middle of nowhere, but there was pheasant everywhere.
Antelope.
Yes, antelope. I mean, animals like wild game everywhere.
Yeah.
It was so cool. We were hanging out, and I'm like, dude, there's a pheasant in your backyard, and he's like, yeah, no, we feed them. I'm like, what are you talking about?
What?
Where's the shotgun?
Yeah, come on now. Well, can Tony, if you're listening, no.
Yeah.
Well, I always can't get over when you go up to those kind of farms. A field is 300 acres.
Yeah.
400 acres. It's incredible.
Yeah, it is. It really is. It's so neat to see the different ways that farming goes on around the country. So anyway, we wanted to talk a little bit about FBN, and then talk a little bit about Charles, and kind of how all this started, and how you got involved, and where all this came about. But to rewind a little bit, and again, as I said, when I first kind of got introduced to it, being in the farming industry at the time, when I was working on the merchandising with Farm Focused, I was also working with local growers on some soil biologicals, so some inputs that they were doing at planting time. So I was getting a really good feel for how this industry works. And more importantly to me, I think a lot of the things that stick out to me are the players in the game and the forces at play.
Yeah.
So I started realizing really quick, like, I am way too small to play in this game. Like, I'm going to get pushed out because if I get big,
Yep.
I'm going to get noticed and then I'm going to get pushed out. And I started realizing like kind of how all this stuff was going. And then I started hearing about FBN. And you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm just going to give you my original impression. So I looked at it and I was like, okay, here comes a group of people that are from the outside looking in, looked to me like it was almost like a nationwide co-op, like a co-op kind of strategy that are going to come in and start rocking the boat, start disrupting, and start trying to figure out a way to make things more transparent, to get rid of the curtain, let people see what's behind the curtain, and start being on the farmer's side, farmers first, right? So that was the way that I interpreted it. That was my initial, just the little bit that I was seeing. So how close was I?
That you're right on. You're right on. Yeah. So I mean, it's the idea originally came from, there was a handful of farmers who were working together, and they actually wanted to share their data with each other.
Okay.
And what they were trying to do is actually, one was the other guy's seed dealer, and he was saying, okay, hey, I want to, don't just show me the products that you're selling and how they're doing on the company's trials. I want to see how they're actually working on your farm. I've got the same soils you do. And as we got to know them and they wanted to share data to be able to evaluate seed decision making, he said, why do you want to do that? Why do you want to share that information? Well, we don't trust necessarily the information I'm getting from my dealer. Okay, why don't you trust that? Well, I know they're trying to sell me this product.
Right.
Okay, well, what about the universities? Well, I know the companies pay for those trials too. Okay, well, what about other sources,
Exactly.
right? And so what you just kept getting to was that farmers were very, very frustrated by the position they had in the farm economy, which makes complete sense. I mean, farming is a very, very unique industry in the sense that you have 2 million family farms in America. You have a handful of companies who buy the grain. You have a handful of companies who manufacture the products.
Yeah. Handful.
Handful.
Just a handful.
Yeah, whether in seed, chemical, fertilizer. And then you have a handful of retailers. And the farmers, the ones in the middle who take all the risk, do all the work, and don't capture all the rewards. They have the lowest margins. They have the lowest returns. They have the lowest, the highest rates of, insolvency and going out of business. So, farming has been where the risk is, right?
So that could cause frustration, taking on all the risk but not reaping the reward.
Right.
Okay.
The old saying, farmer's the only one who pays retail, sells wholesale, and pays the freight both ways.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so it's true. And a lot of the parts of farming evolved over, if you take the seed industry, for example, there was a couple hundred, I think 300 or 400 seed companies selling corn in the 1980s. And that's, really down to just 2 or 3 who have the dominant genetics or traits that every other brand on the market is using, right? So you have these massive consolidations that have taken place as technology has come about on the farm. A lot of that technology has benefited farms enormously. But what it's also led to is more concentration in the market and more of that market power. So, what we then started doing was creating ways for farmers to, number one, compare to each other to say, because every farmer wants to know how they're doing, right? They all know like, hey, I think I'm doing well, but I don't really know. So we allowed them to share their data in anonymously, and they could say, great, here's how my yields compare to my neighbors or my area. You can't see the person's name, but you can say, okay, within 50 miles of my farm, here's how my yields are doing.
If I can pause you for a second, do you think, did that come from the background experience of like yourself and any other co-founders in the rest of the business world? Because it seems to me that what I had seen in the business world prior to agriculture, those are some of the best practices. Like the best companies are looking and understanding what all of their competitors, so to speak, or their partners or sister companies or whatever are doing.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it came from, so myself, I did not grow up on a farm. I grew up in suburban California and worked at Google before, before working and starting FBN. My co-founder was a guy named Mol Deshpande, and he was an investor in food and agriculture, and he had developed a fish farm before. He had started his career in aquaculture, but had been involved in all types of farm enterprises. But a bit of it came from, if you were a little bit of an outsider and you look at the industry and you say, hey, not everything here makes sense.
Right, right.
If you grew up in the industry exclusively, then you'd say, this is just the way it is, right?
Right,
And
yeah.
it's too big, it's too hard to change. This
is how we've always done it.
This is how we've always done it, right? And so you had to have a bit of both, right? You have to have a healthy dose of skepticism to say, I think this can be done a different way. Here's how it's being done in all kinds of other industries, and here's what doesn't make sense about agriculture. And then you have to have enough respect and knowledge of what the real world actually is practically, and that farms are real businesses that need to take physical goods, and you have real suppliers who have all kinds of concerns, and so that has to work. You can't just it's not just a social media app. Like there's physical goods that have to move around here, and so there's very serious issues that farmers deal with. So you have to have a healthy dose of, hey, this could be better, and then respect for the way things are in a certain way that there some of those things make sense.
I bet you went through some pretty good growing pains, because you got to really finesse this, where your number one argument that I would hear a lot is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Okay, so Grandpa did it this way, my dad did it this way, and now I'm going to do it this way. Through the same seed dealer, taken to the same elevator, Okay, so how do you say, if it ain't, it ain't broke, but
Right.
It could be better.
right?
It can always
You're telling a man his business. This is my phone.
Well,
Yeah.
that's. I think we were always tried to be very careful to say, we're not going to tell you what to do. We're gonna show you. We're going to show you what's available to you.
Okay.
And I can't make the decisions for you. So we created these systems that would allow you to compare your performance. So you could say, okay, here's how I'm actually stacking up compared to other farms in Nebraska, other farms in Iowa. And then you could see how all your seeds, what the best performing seeds were, for example. And that was actually the original, point of interest from growers. And see how which seeds belonged on your farm, what fair market prices were, and then we created systems that would allow you to place those seeds on each field, so you could look at exactly which seed belonged on my field from all the farms who are sharing in seed data, objectively from the real world. And so then ultimately we give growers that information, say, okay, your prices are, you're overpaying 10%,
right.
and you're under yielding 5 or 10%. And if you switch brands, there's the data actually shows you that one of these other brands would be much better for you. And so it's tough. You can't
right.
tell people what to do, it's up to them.
And would you say, because I think a misconception out there is that farmers are just stuck in their way, because I think a lot of farmers and people in ag, they have very open minds. And if it can help their bottom line, they'll at least look at it. They'll give you the time of day. Like, when we were in biologicals, they'll at least talk to us. But then it's the next part. It's like, how do you go in there and get your piece in, and then really make them sit down and then think about it, rather than just reverting back to, that was interesting.
Right. Right. I think farmers are incredibly experimental, and the best farmers are constantly innovating, and they're constantly adapting and trying new things. And what you typically find is farmers will try anything for a year. And then, if you're going to get to year 2, and earn a place on the farm, that's a completely different hurdle of performance and reliability, and that you have to create for that farm. So it's a lot of work and a huge kind of honor to get a place on the farm when you've actually earned your place and you become somebody that they really trust and depend on. But most farmers will give you a shot, and then you got to earn it.
So
go ahead. Sorry.
How long has FBN been FBN?
Been around? Yeah. So we started 10 years ago.
Okay.
A little over, just 10 years ago. Started with that handful of farms. And then what we started doing was then, inviting growers in to participate in data sharing. It was all anonymous data sharing. So you could, benchmark, find better seeds, compare your performance, find what fair market prices were for seeds and chemical. And then the more we started doing that group analysis, then farmers would start saying, great, you just found that I could save 40% on chemical. Go get the product for me. Thanks for telling me. Now go get it for me.
Yeah, now do it.
Right. And so from there, we started figuring out how to actually go procure and sell the products to farmers. That then turned into FBN becoming the largest provider of crop protection online. We then eventually got into selling seed. We got into providing lending for farms. crop marketing, insurance, though we just stopped doing that this last year, and then sustainability for farms as well. So basically, the genesis of it all was how, when farmers work together and work together in a digital system, how can they perform better, and how can we create more competition for their business so that we bring more opportunities to the farm, so they can increase their profitability through a digital network.
Okay.
So I think farmers are used to the, obviously you're used to the co-op concept, which is very local. We're very much not a co-op, but FBN is a digital network that is, 90,000 farms in the United States and Canada. And then tens of thousands of those farms do different components of FBN. We do everything from selling livestock supplies, pharmaceuticals and feed, to crop protection, to biologicals, to a huge sustainability program now where we manage all of the sustainability premiums for ADM and POET ethanol, all kind of enabled by that digital network and building that digital commercial system.
So when I originally said I felt like this is almost like a nationwide co-op kind of setup, what you're saying there is that no, that's not the case. So what is different about that?
Well, I think co-ops have a different mandate. Basically, they have a cost share and a patronage mandate. And what FBN really wants to do is create competition, for the grower, like create competition inside that platform, for the grower, basically. And so co-ops can also legally do things that we can't. You're allowed to have farmers work together on marketing and things like that. What FBN, the way I think about it is it's a digital network that, when farmers participate in those sharing systems and those cooperative systems that are part of FBN, they can benefit from that transparency. So you can see what fair market prices are. When you share an invoice for chemical or seed, you can see what other growers are paying for chemical and seed across hundreds or thousands of products, and see what that price is going to be. When you share yield data, you can see what seeds are actually performing on other farms and what the best farms are, or best seeds for your farm actually are. So we create those opportunities for cooperation for farmers who want to do that, because I think it's really this concept of co-opetition that farmers are very used to, which is, yes, my neighbor is my neighbor, but we have to work together sometimes, and we also are in competition for things like land and other resources.
So is there other companies that are like trying to do you now? Like, I'm not from this industry. Is there anybody that's trying to like be the next FBN since you like started this?
There are in other countries. I think in the U.S. there's pieces of it. People have gotten into, and people have been doing things like yield analysis and precision ag for a long time. But there's components of it with people trying to do online farm supply. There's people doing online lending that has come out since FBN. But, what we try to do is put the whole platform together for a grower so that a grower can have one easy...
It's like a one-stop shop?
Precisely, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. I like that. We're kind of used to that.
Yeah. We're gonna launch Farmers Network Business. So
you're just going to switch
that's
the
what
names.
we got going on. Right.
Yeah.
What I kind of view here, because I still know a lot of folks who are glued to their local radio station, and they know they got to be by the pickup truck to hear the closing bids at this time and that time, and then they'll know, okay, I got to drop everything. I got to get a truckload into town, to the elevator. And there's kind of a longing for that. Like, I like that, and also I like supporting the local elevator, especially in a small community like where I'm from. But what I get from FBN, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're not saying either or. Like, I hate this mindset that we're all stuck to. You either like The Simpsons or you like Family Guy.
Right.
You can't like them both. They can't be and. I feel like FBN is an and. You can be part of FBN and you can open up your app on your phone and see what's going on, and also listen to the local radio station. You can do both. You can be FBN and support the local elevator. Right?
100%. It should be giving you more visibility on the market around you, so you can make the best choices for your farm. We're not an elevator, right?
Yeah.
We're not a place you deliver your grain to. But what we create in crop marketing, for example, is you can see the bids every 15 minutes. They're updating, and it does a little math for you where it shows you here's going to be the most profitable place to deliver based on distance, basis, your delivery cost, drying costs, etc. And it'll update that every 15 minutes if you set it that way. And then on like sustainability, for a lot of farmers who are doing regenerative ag, we use our analytics platform to validate practices that are done on the farm, and then food companies or buyers like ADM, Poet, and others come to us and say, can you administer this program with growers so that if Pepsi or Costco or somebody like that is coming and paying a premium, that they can pass that value back to the grower. So we do that. And in that case, we create a marketplace for those regenerative premiums.
Right.
So a grower can come on to FBN and they can see, here's, for me in my location, here's all the regenerative premiums I can qualify for from all these buyers, and then have one way of basically participating in that in a simple interface.
I
So
think
you try and create a marketplace.
Why
for all that.
wouldn't anybody want to be a part? I mean, like, what's the
That's
big?
that's the obvious question.
No, I know, but I'm just wondering what do you hear that makes people not want to be a part of this? They're those type of people that you were talking about earlier, Andy, that just don't want to share data, that don't really want.
Oh, that's real. That is real. Like,
right.
you don't
I
want
know
your
that's
neighbor
real
knowing.
just because I've
Yeah.
heard that, but is that kind of the biggest hiccup
Well, I
that
think
you guys?
it was in the early days when that's what we were doing. So
Okay.
that was the dominant thing we were doing in
Yeah.
our first 4 or 5 years. But now you can use all of the FBN system without having
That.
to do that.
Yes.
If you just
Okay.
want to get a loan or you want to buy livestock products or then you don't have to do anything with data. Data is all optional. It's free. It's free to use. We used to have a paid membership where it was $700, but now it's all free. So if you share, you get to see, and that keeps the system fair. But then there's opportunities with like regenerative ag where there's some things you have to put in to capture those premiums, but otherwise it's all optional. So concerns on data was always one, and also you'd often hear people say, well, you're not local. So
okay.
you're online or you're this tech thing, you're not local. And to that I'd say, well, first, the most important local business is your farm, and you have to stay in business, right? So you need to sharpen your pencil to make sure you're going to get through a tough market, especially like right now. This is exactly like when we started in 2014. We were at 350 corn, right? And kind of looks like 2014 again right now.
Yeah.
So these are the moments you got to sharpen your pencil, and you got to be an analytical farmer, be a money ball farmer. You got to go for the highest ROI, not just the things that you've done in the past. And then secondly, FBN's quite local. We have hundreds of employees. We have hundreds of employees across the U.S. and Canada. We have dozens of facilities. We have dozens of trucks and truck drivers who are out there every day getting to all of our growers. We have hundreds of what we call our community builders, who are our affiliates who basically.
All right, that cut out for a second. We had a few technical difficulties, but we got back on track here. So Charles was talking about kind of the local connection with FBN and kind of what you guys are doing to bring that home.
Yeah. I mean, I think people always would say, okay, well, if I buy from FBN, am I supporting my community, and I want to support my community, how am I being local? And what I've always said is, most important local business of all is your farm. Without profitable farms, there are no communities in rural America, in rural Canada, right? And if your farm's not going to be profitable, the land is still going to get farmed. It's going to get farmed by somebody else, right? As farms consolidate. So you have to stay profitable on the farm. It's your duty on the farm to keep that land. And we think farms are best managed when they're managed by family farms, right? And they you keep a reasonable size on those operations, because frankly that also allows for better care of the land, better stewardship of the land. And I think that's going to, if you look at goals like regenerative ag or other sustainability benefits, I think those goals will be best achieved by having people with long-term interest on the land. And no one has that more than the family.
It allows as well for more competition too.
Absolutely.
You keep more of those people on their own ground and, working with and not against, but as kind of a team out there in the field to keep the suppliers honest and competitive.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, and then, as FBN, as I said, we have hundreds of employees who are, vast majority of them are in our rural communities out there with our growers, whether they're salespeople or agronomists, or there are facilities. We have, a couple dozen, 24 facilities around North America, our trucks, and so we have brought tens, maybe even hundreds of millions of dollars of savings back to family farms. And we were able to validate this in Canada when we dealt with some antitrust issues against FBN. But when FBN sold a product, just by us posting those prices online, the average price for all Canadian farmers, for example, went down about 3.6%, whether or not they bought from FBN.
Yeah.
So just by us being in the market, really brought, money back to the farm.
Just being transparent.
Just being transparent.
Right. Just sharing information.
Yeah, and just there being a price in the market that everyone could access. And that's one of the big things about the way we sell product at FBN. You can always go online, you can see the price. It's up there 24/7.
For everybody to see.
For everybody to see.
Everybody.
Yeah, and that is not a radical concept in every other part of your life. When you go to the gas station, the prices
And everybody knows it.
right up there, right? And but in ag, that is because the way products have been sold to farmers for a long time has been hidden pricing or one-off pricing. That had been a huge point of frustration for growers. So when we got into selling products like chemical, we created, a transparent price that you could always see, and it's, our best offer, kind of, straightforward, upfront. And farmers really, really appreciated that. And just by us even having a public price that most farms in the country could access, that made the entire industry more competitive.
Yeah.
And so sometimes now we hear, oh, FBN, your prices aren't as good as they used to be. When you came out, you were 20%, 30% below the market. Now it's not as big a savings. Well, that's because the whole market had to adjust basically to where the FBN prices were.
Yeah. No, I want to say congratulations. You got to that point where they start bitching about your prices. That's a great place to be, right? Right. So this is year 10.
Yep.
I kind of want to. I get lost in the evolution because at first it seemed like it was a membership type of business.
Yes.
Solely focused on just comparing prices and giving people information, right?
Right.
Now you guys have your own labeled seed and chemicals, or what? Where are we at?
Yeah. So now we're a full provider to the farm, right? So a full supplier. You can use us to buy chemical, crop protection. We just stopped doing seed this year. We'll probably be getting back to it in a year, but we're changing our seed strategy up for this next year. But crop protection, biologicals, livestock supplies, pharmaceuticals, feed, supplies, anything you need for, on farm and ranch for livestock. And then we're a major lender to farms as well. So you can get operating lines of credit, input lines, real estate. We've done over $2.5 billion of, farm credit that we've put out primarily through ag land and through real estate. We then have the third sort of major component is marketing and sustainability, where we do market advisory for growers and then also create that sustainability marketplace I talked about where we manage sustainability and regenerative programs for companies like ADM and Poet Ethanol.
I mean, that's a lot. You put in a lot right there. So would that fall on the local guys being like the advisor you're talking about?
Yep.
You got what in a perfect scenario like where you guys are established? Is there one community guy for every 2,000 acres, or how does that work? I wouldn't even begin to.
Yeah, we sort of one way we think about it is like every place that we have a facility, we want to have about more than 80% of the farms in the country within 250 miles of a FBN facility, because if you're within 250 miles of an FBN facility, we can get a product to you in as little as 1 to 3 days, right? So that means every time you go to the website and you say, I want to tote a product or I need some glufosinate, it's going to show you exactly when that product can get to your farm, and then we can provide the best possible service to get it there quickly.
What's the, elaborate a little bit on the community builders.
Yeah.
What is that role?
The community builders were a great kind of extension of FBN. So effectively, it's a farmer or a independent dealer who wants to sell FBN products and has a side business or wants to have a side business. So it's an entrepreneurial opportunity.
Kind of like a individual who's a seed salesman.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like being a dealer. It's a little different than a dealership because in a dealer has to deliver. They have to collect the payment. They have to do all kinds of stuff.
Gotcha.
So in this case, it's really where somebody can just work with customers and sell, and then FBN handles everything else. Handles all the delivery, handles all the billing, handles all the collections, all the challenging parts of running a small business, and then allows you to just really focus on the customer.
And I think what most farmers can find if they're listening to this for the first time or finding out about FBN, that there's probably somebody pretty close to them that's one of these community builders that has product available And then is the community builder the rep?
For those farms, if you work through a community builder, that's your rep.
Okay.
Now, the product still, just shoots out of an FBN warehouse on an FBN truck, comes to the farm, or you can, any farm anywhere can always go online, buy directly online, or you can call us and talk to somebody. We have agronomists who'll help you out. We have, a lot of phenomenal chemical expertise. And then we have AI systems that we've been building that, can allow you to actually interact and make product selection decisions, using AI, which is a phenomenal new thing we've started doing in the last year and a half.
This could probably get like really deep into a lot of different things, but you guys are, I assume, integrating with some of the latest, like, mapping technology and yield technology and things like that are out there that can feed into your system to give guys recommendations.
Yeah, so going back to the very beginning of FBN when we started doing data analysis, we took data from any type of system. So John Deere, Case, it was like over 70 formats of, precision ag data we could process. So you can hook up, you can just plug in your John Deere account, your Case account. It'll, it's an online connection, so it just pipes over automatically. So that creates a phenomenally easy experience for a grower. And then FBN processes it, analyzes it, benchmarks it. Then you get that mapping, which takes you down the road of the sustainability premium. And then it also gets you things like the seed finder analytics and the benchmarking services.
Man, there's so much to it.
There is.
There's a lot.
I would like people to know as well, literally as we're sitting here, I got a text from FBN that I can save 9% on FBN inputs. If I just click on this link, I can go in. But no, this was because I signed up for the app and I, got in there, in the back end of FBN.
That's
because
great to see.
when I was at, I've been to multiple your guys' farm shows and events and stuff hanging out, but in one of the first ones I was at, in order to get a beer, I had to download the app.
Right.
Oh,
I
they
downloaded
got you.
the app. Yeah. But now, I get these things all the time. It's a lot of really good info, but
well, that's the best like customer service that we figured out how to provide, which is that so many times people, their passwords have expired or they got some little problem in the system and they kind of don't want to call you up and deal with it. And I'm like, okay, well, if you find the beer in there, you get it. And then people will they'll reset their password. They'll go through all
Just
the pain.
for a beer.
They'll get their account ready to go and they'll get the beer.
Beer at a farm show is always going to be a home run.
Oh, yeah. And that's kind of where I wanted my next question, because you guys have really scaled up over 10 years. And you've gone through a lot of different evolutions, from going to information-based, now you have products. What's been the biggest key to your guys' growth? Would you say it's the expos, like Husker Harvest Days just happened? That's a big one. Or has it just been like online marketing? Like what's really worked for you guys?
I mean, there's really no replacement for just word of mouth and being something that farmers want, and paying really close attention to what is it that farmers want to see in the world. And that was how we got going. The members and farmers who created FBN were farmers who wanted to see the industry change. They wanted to get better deals. They wanted more transparency. They wanted to get this information. And so they shared it with their friends. Yeah. We would have meetings. We would do these data analysis meetings where, 5-10 guys would show up and we'd help them understand what's going on locally. That was the genesis of FBN and really is at the heart of FBN. And so we do everything. We do farm shows. We do, a lot of stuff online. Obviously, we love working online because we're an online company. But at the end of the day, in agriculture, you cannot just be online. If you do not have a flesh and blood, connection to your customer, it doesn't work.
Yeah. Isn't that fascinating? Here's this cutting edge company in this ag space. You guys have Norm, your own AI system, but word of mouth. Is the key.
Yep. And those face-to-face contacts.
Yeah.
Which we always talk about, getting back to talking to your neighbor, being face-to-face with someone. Because it's irreplaceable.
Yeah, and you won't survive as a company if you can't survive that, and if people aren't using it and don't want to, you're not paying attention to what they really need or what their issues when something doesn't go right really are, then you'll never have the right relationship with the customer at the end of the day.
Yeah. Agree. So.
I've got one more question about FBN, and then I want to get into a couple of other things. But earlier on and throughout the conversation, you've been touching on sustainability, and I never really understood what FBN was doing in that arena. And this may not be one of your bigger things, but it's just interesting to me because it's such a hot topic. There's so many people talking about that. You know, when I talk to people who aren't farmers or aren't involved in farming, it's sustainable ag. These guys should be doing this. They should be doing that. You know, whatever, this kind of thing that the general public thinks. So where are you guys coming in with that?
Well, actually, this is now becoming one of our bigger
Okay.
and most important parts of FBN. This year, we're anticipating we'll have over 20,000 farms on our sustainability platform, which means they're participating in one program or another
Okay.
Through our partners. This last year, we paid out over $32 million in premiums to our members
Wow.
who participate in that,
Wow.
from our downstream partners. So the way that, that's worked is that, so if you go back to over the last 10, 15 years, with people trying to incentivize farmers and reward farmers for regenerative practices, no-till, cover cropping, fertilizer efficiency, et cetera. You had all these food companies or grain buyers or environmental groups showing up to the farm, each trying to do something differently. And then a farmer didn't know which one to work with. And I got to work with, 5 or 10 different providers, go through 5 or 10 different processes. I got to validate everything. It was a total pain. Then you had the carbon world show up as well, which is a whole other, challenge for how farmers were going to validate, those credits. So we really tried to simplify that to say, if you're going to be able to do and reward farmers at scale, tens of thousands of farms on tens of millions of acres in the commodities, you just have to start standardizing the systems. And so we created this platform called Gradable. And Gradable is a technology that is plugged in with ADM and now Poet Ethanol and a number of other major grain buyers and ethanol companies. And it allows the grain buyer to attach a sustainability feature to a grain transaction. So when basically, if a grower is doing no-till, they can sell that grain, and that grain can be marked as no-till corn, right? And we just have to track it back to the field, and you have to know the field that it came from. But what's important there is that is actually marketable by ADM when they turn to go to sell grain or sell soybeans to Europe, for example. So we have to work through all these regulatory systems around the world, and then these very buyer-specific programs, and translate that into here's exactly how a farmer enrolls and qualifies for that premium, and then do that very simply, and then create a way where farmers get paid, right? And so we've done that through the Gradable platform. So a farmer now just goes on to FBN. They can see, for my location, and if I'm in eastern Nebraska, there's going to be a couple Poet programs. There's going to be a bunch of ADM programs. There's going to be soybeans, corn, wheat. There's going to be options for each of my crops. Here are the steps I need to do to enroll, and I can do it right there online. And then I drop my data in. It's the same process as the way FBN's always analyzed data.
Interesting.
And it makes it very easy to do. Then you go and it tells you time to deliver the grain. Here's the 3 things you need to do to capture the premium. And then we're also going to be enabling the payment to come straight to the grower.
Wow.
So that part of FBN we've turned into a joint venture with ADM called Gradable. And it's now a standalone sort of joint venture, and it can work with any grain buyer out in the market as well.
And a lot of these guys and ladies, I mean, it's stuff that they're already doing.
It's stuff that, this was the big problem with carbon, or one of the big challenges that farmers had when they were excited about carbon, but you had dozens of programs and dozens of different systems, and then you had to create this additionality. And so that additionality meant you had to go do something new. So if you were doing cover cropping, you might have to stop doing cover cropping, then start doing it again. And that really drove people crazy.
Yeah.
So instead, we focused on what we call these supply chain programs with a food buyer, a Pepsi, a Costco, an ADM, and they want to reward what you're already doing. And so that way, if you're doing cover cropping or no-till, you can get that reward now for what you're doing, what you've already been doing. And then we've even done another step off that, which is if you then qualify through those things, we then create special financing programs. So you can get a quarter point or a half point off an operating loan if you are participating in those programs, because we go get different capital who wants to reward environmental practices. So it creates a whole system where you can monetize those practices, those regenerative practices, through your marketing and then through your financing as well, and then all the soil health benefits that you're getting, from doing it in the first place.
Wow.
Yeah, and you're once again creating a market, and it's one that wasn't being realized by a lot of farmers that were already doing this. On our ranch, I know when we do alfalfa, and when it gets graded out, it's at a very high level, and we could sell it for a higher price, but like we don't.
Yeah.
You know, we just sell it for like a lower grade. You know,
I mean, it's the stuff that a lot of these guys are doing already. They already know it's the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. It's the way that they've been doing it for years.
Yeah. It's easy.
In every farm, needs things done differently. So it's not a one solution fixes all, or everyone has to do it this way or whatever. Mm-hmm. But you're doing that.
Yeah.
And some of these things do cost some extra money. Like when you and I were dealing with the soil biologicals,
right.
One of the big things that was coming on at the time too was cover crops. Mm-hmm. And I was talking to a lot of guys about cover crops, and they're like, "Man, it's going to cost me another $20 an acre.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure. Does this make sense? Does it not? But when you start getting into things like this, where you can get some data, and you can also potentially get some monetary benefit from it.
Mm-hmm. Up front, you get that kickback right away, or the savings right away.
Yeah, you can. It's once you've satisfied those programs or satisfied the terms, they can be up to $20 an acre. I mean, there's some very, very, very nice programs out there for growers.
That's awesome.
So, yeah,
I think you could probably do just a podcast in and of itself with just that sustainability piece.
Oh, yeah.
The more I hear you talk about it.
You want to come back?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, the part of the vision was always we want to so every grain buyer was doing their own, and then you'd have the food companies trying to do their own. And again, you just have to create that standard platform that any food company, any grain buyer, that is usable by growers, so the grower knows how to use it, and then it's meaningful downstream for all the regulatory purposes.
Right.
So, for example, in Europe right now, there's this thing with deforestation-free soybeans. And so those soybeans being sold into Europe have to be validated as deforestation-free, which means we need to just know the field that is qualifying for the program, and then the satellites go in and they look at the last 10 years of imagery, and you can say, okay, this field did not wasn't cut down, more than 25% of the field or what have you wasn't removed, so it's deforestation free. Now you have access to that market, and that actually benefits U.S. growers, because U.S. soybean farmers are going to have that market, and probably Brazilian farmers are going to struggle in that market.
It kind of like flips the script, because if I'm thinking about that scenario, like of deforestation as an example, the old way, it would have paid better for somebody to go in there and deforest and put in the crop and make the money off of it, and rape the land and move on.
Right.
Where now it's kind of it's turning the table a little bit, where it's saying, no, if you do that, you're actually going to get paid less. If you do it over this way, you can make more money.
Right.
You can feel better about yourself.
And once again, you're basically, I've heard this term used a lot by Elon Musk. You're creating a town square on a global scale that you call a platform for all these buyers, sellers, producers, growers to work together. And and really everybody kind of comes out on top.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
And so I think that's another and last thing I'll say on FBN is, I think people have thought, well, FBN, you're against the industry, or you're against the manufacturers or something like that. But no, we think there's a more efficient way to kind of align the system that also benefits farmers, and that benefits farmers. At the end of the day, what we're going to do is try and create the most profitable system for producers and for family farms. Yeah. And if that means reducing the number of middlemen between a manufacturer and a farmer when it comes to seed or chemical, that's great. If it means to making it easier to capture a premium, we're going to do that, right? If it means here's a way we can use AI to give you better marketing advice, to make a typical family farm, who may not be using an expensive advisor, better at marketing, we're going to do that, right? Yeah. So we're going to find ways to use the power of technology to make farms more competitive, more profitable.
Super interesting, man. I would say overall,
it's a hell of an elevator speech.
And when I hear the word competitive, I mean, hello. He doesn't know, but I'm pretty competitive.
Oh,
so.
yeah. I think
sounds good.
I think the big thing that you guys are doing, just as a bottom line, is just keeping people honest. Keeping that stuff out there, giving people choices, and then the individual growers or ranchers or producers or whoever can make the decision. Do I want to work with the folks who I've found out have been kind of bending me over all these years, or do I want to work with the ones that are pointed out? So I'll just leave that out there.
Oh, you hear some great stories.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Oh, man.
So what I wanted to ask you, I wanted to learn a little bit about yourself. First of all, why? Why FBN? Why did you do this?
It's a great question. We started about 10 years ago. I grew up in suburban California. So I actually really had no exposure to farms, before until I was after college. But I'd always been fascinated by the natural world and, wanting to live in a place where there's a little more space than suburban California.
Where your food comes from?
Where your food
you
comes
ever wonder
from.
that?
Yeah.
And just, fascinated by, natural systems, which are inherently just really interconnected. Ecology is interconnected and, the economy is deeply interconnected. I met my, at that time, girlfriend, now wife, and she's from central Nebraska. My brother-in-law was a farmer and spent some time working with him, corn harvest, and just became totally fascinated by the life of a grower. He's the same age as I am, and I was right out of college struggling to get my first job. And, here's this guy, running big equipment, making big decisions, buying land, doing all these things. And I'm like, whoa, I didn't, never thought this was a possibility. And, but also you just realize how hard the job of the farm is. You're getting up, you're fixing equipment, you're managing livestock, you're marketing grain. So you have to do 15 different things. And then, I had this great just kind of moment riding in the cab with him, and you're hearing the radio saying, okay, rain in Brazil, beans are down a point. You're like, well, what in the world does Brazil have to do with Nebraska?
Right.
Yeah.
And I was like, now you're operating in this global system where weather in South America impacts my income in Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
So you're in this deeply interconnected world of global agriculture. But you are a family, and you are on your own. And, in his case, it's him and his dad, right?
Yeah.
They don't have a team of 20 people and a CFO and, a CTO and all these kind of.
They're not Brazil.
No, right. And so you have this world of families who are actually doing all the work, taking all the risk, managing the land. There's $3 trillion of farmland in the United States. Agriculture is the biggest user of land. It's the dominant human activity on the face of the earth, and from that standpoint. And it has more impact on the environment than, just about anything. So for all these reasons, the how a family manages that farm is just tremendously important. And then also you realize how in many ways how powerless the farm is against those forces, those global forces of commodities, these major manufacturers, this major agribusiness system. So, that's exactly what an online network is really, really well suited to help solve and create transparency and create a better way to buy products and create a better way to run your farm. So that was sort of the why of where it came from. Then many years later after that, Amol and I and this group of farmers kicked off on starting the company 2014.
It's an interesting picture that you painted of the farmer, that it's like one of the biggest, most impactful jobs in the world, and yet they have little to no control over anything that's going on.
Yeah, it's probably I can't think of another part of the economy that's that big, $1 trillion economy right around the world, where the people doing the actual value creator in the system, the farm, has the worst economics, has the least control. Right. It's like if in the oil industry, if every oil well was owned by a different family, and all those families didn't talk to each other. Right.
Yeah.
And so
that is mind blowing
comparison.
if you think about it like that.
Yeah, it's just there's nothing else that's that big and that important that works that way.
What was the catalyst then that you just, or was it a progression over time? Because, you could have just stayed at Google within that space. But, I mean, there was a moment 10 years ago, you're like, nope, I'm doing it,
Well, I'd always really wanted to start a company or be involved in creating a company. I had been doing investing before, and so had worked with entrepreneurs and just admired them and wanted to be sitting on the other side of the table. So the opportunity came about with, this concept that some of these farmers were noodling, and Amol was, sitting there at an investment firm, and he was ready to start a company as well. And we, said, all right, let's do it.
Wow.
And it was, I think you had to, again, look at, it was just around this time where farmers were becoming very aware of the value of the data that they were generating on the farm, and that they needed to have their own option and an independent option. At that time, Monsanto had just bought Climate Corp, And farmers were getting very concerned about that.
Yeah.
And so they said, all right, we need to have our own independent system, our own independent network that, created the benefits for us from all this information. And that was one of the early genesis of FBN.
That data harvesting, whether it's a tractor company, a seed company,
Yeah.
man, they all get it and they all trade it and they all sell it. And once again, the farmer provides it all, but doesn't get any rewards from that.
Right. And a lot of farmers actually pay
That too.
to use it.
Yeah, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus.
So they're paying them to get their, it's a crazy scenario.
And if there's probably one misnomer about FBN that I would just love to correct it, because every competitor throws this one out. We do not sell farmers' data, period. Right? So that's always what a competitor, a salesperson always says. FBN's just out there to
sell your data.
It has absolutely no bearing. No.
Yeah, that's what liars do, though. They're the ones selling the data, and the first line of defense is, no, they're actually doing it.
Look over there.
I didn't cheat. You cheated. He cheated.
So to rewind you a little bit, you had mentioned your girlfriend and your wife, in the family farm and that. Where did you guys meet?
We actually met at the State Department, working in the State Department in college. So,
okay. And that was in California?
In D.C.
Oh, D.C. You were in D.C.
In D.C.
Oh, duh. Okay. State Department in D.C. Yeah.
That one.
So
then she's a veterinarian, and so then she's
okay.
from Nebraska, and we decided to leave D.C. and go back to.
So she was able to convince you that this isn't just a flyover state? You actually moved here? You live here now?
Yeah.
Right.
So then,
Cool.
2 years ago, moved from California to Omaha.
And she was from Central Nebraska, you said?
She's from Kearney.
Kearney area.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And what did you go to school for?
I actually studied history in college, but studied history and focused on kind of geopolitics and energy. But again, it was sort of a similar theme of the role of just how connected the world is to these systems, whether it's the energy system and how that influences the national security of the country, to how something like agriculture or energy impacts the environment and all of our lives. So that's always what I've been fascinated by.
Did you have interest in that kind of general idea when, even at a young age, when you were a kid? Like, was little Charles like, or was it Charlie?
Energy. It was always Charles.
Charles, no Charlie.
Was little Charles like wanting to figure out how to organize the local baseball group, or?
No, but I did have a lawn mowing business. So.
Okay, there you go. Yeah,
There's some energy there.
Yeah. I was very excited to have my own lawnmower when I got that.
Heck yeah.
5th grade. So.
Nice.
Do you guys have children?
We do. Yeah, we have 3 kids, 3 girls here, and Nebraska's been great for kids. A lot easier than California. They can do a lot more stuff. So it's great.
When did you guys move to Nebraska?
2022. Yeah, about 2 years ago. Yeah.
And I didn't realize that your wife's family was from here, so I was just trying to take guesses earlier on how you chose Nebraska, but I guess it's pretty
That's
obvious.
why.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's close to family and right in the middle of FBN and all our customers. And
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a lot easier for me. I don't have to hop on a plane. I can just get in the car and shoot
Right.
over. We've got a lot of employees in Sioux Falls. We have facilities in Lincoln, Larchwood, Iowa, Hays, Kansas. All up and down South Dakota, North Dakota, and
And so your in-laws, they still farm?
my brother-in-law does. Yeah.
Your brother-in-law?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he does standard central Nebraska mixed operation with
Corn,
he does
soybeans.
corn, soybeans, and dryland crops, and then background's cattle and does cow calf as well.
So do you help out at all here and there, like you did back in the day? You
I
said,
think
or no?
it's gotten me a lot busier with FBN. So
I'm
probably
sure,
haven't
and
put in
3
as many-
kids, but
yeah.
I'm just curious if you ever get that little.
Putting a brother-in-law on the spot there.
Well, maybe I don't know.
So I was going to say
saying.
that earlier, when you're talking about helping out or whatever, like, I guess, when you get to go out and do that kind of stuff, I mean, it's fun. Running the equipment, seeing the land, seeing all the stuff come together, like there's something special about that. And when we were talking earlier about, the position that the farmer's in and how important that job is, but how, strapped they are and how they don't get to make a lot of decisions for themselves and so on and so forth, it makes you wonder, like, why would anybody ever do this? You know what I mean? But then when you get out there in the field and you get to run a season and kind of see how everything comes together, good or bad, there's just like something really fulfilling about it.
Yeah, it's an incredible life, I think.
Yeah, I'm really glad that's the way you took that. I thought you were just going to accuse them of being crazy.
No, I mean, it's a fascinating job. It's an incredible life. You get to be outdoors. You're working with your hands. It's incredibly intellectually challenging. I think farmers are a lot of the smartest folks that I know, and I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions of people living in the coast. Right? Is farmers are somehow unsophisticated or not using technology, and they're the most innovative, adaptable people you ever meet.
I mean, just think about what gets done on a farm before 8 a.m. I mean, if you got 50 head of cattle, 600 acres of corn / soybeans, I mean, just the decisions that have to be made and the chores, just the daily grind. It has to happen before 8.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, you need those tools to be able to be efficient.
Right.
And to make good decisions. And that's the things where you guys come in. With FBN, is there anything that you would like to talk about or that you wished we would have asked about the organization that you'd want to make sure we touch on?
Oh, I just think I think us as a technology-centered company that's a rural company is quite rare. Actually, you just don't see it in, out of Silicon Valley or California and other places like that where you have a true rural enterprise. There's a lot of times you'll see companies that build technology for a farm, but they're not truly a rural business.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing for FBN is that, we build technology, but at the end of the day, we're a rural business, for our customers, for family farms.
Yeah, you can see that.
Definitely.
What would you want people to do who might be interested? Like where should they go? What should they be looking for?
Oh, well, definitely, you go to FBN.com. It's all up there. It's free to join. In FBN, we took away the membership fee, so anyone can join. And then if you have any questions, there's phone number on there, and don't hesitate to, call the system because I think, people think, oh, it's online, I have to figure it out. No, we got a big team. We've got agronomists. We've got grain marketers. We've got livestock specialists. We've got farm finance specialists.
Yeah.
We have a bunch of folks who with a deep, bench of knowledge to help produce route.
And if you become a member, and you get to be a part of this, you go to the farm shows, you go to Husker Harvest Days, you go to Farm Progress.
You get a beer.
You go to the tent, you get a free beer.
You get a free beer.
app, get a free beer. I like that. Okay. Don't leave
know
that
why
out.
you wouldn't do that.
Right.
But honestly, though, I mean, after talking about all this, and Morgan said it earlier, I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't sign up. Like, why not and just see what's out there, see what's going on.
Someone that's not quite removed, more removed than these boys.
Yeah.
I feel like, not that you just sales pitched at all, but you definitely talked about it in a manner that it's like, it just makes sense. Why would you not? So, hello, join.
Well,
Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah,
Information, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I think there was a survey that came out this summer I saw that said 20% of farms in America were price checking on FBN.
Really?
And so,
okay.
yeah, I mean, it's really created an information clearinghouse in a sense to say this is the benchmark price for this product, nationally. And so, whether or not people have been buying from FBN, they've been benefiting from us being in the market and shaking up the market. And I think you're going to see a lot more from us over the next year of a lot more of the products that and have been using available through the FBN system, and more partnerships and more services that people can get. That you can find a custom applicator if you need a custom applicator. You can find one on FBN. If you need to buy and sell hay, you can do that on FBN. You can sell your equipment and buy used equipment that other farmers are posting in there. So there's a whole community in there as well. It's not just a platform where you buy things.
Knowledge is power, and the more knowledge we can share with each other as farmers, ranchers, the better. And to me, that's the crux of FBN. You're sharing information, and you're encouraging it. Instead of stay in the dark, stay in the corner. Being a seed dealer, I got these 4 strands I'll talk to you about.
Right.
That's it. And don't worry about what your neighbor's paying for or doing. And you're just kind of you're just kicking that door in.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the whether it's a seed dealer or companies who want to create that relationship with their farm. Used FBN, right? So one of the biggest users of FBN were seed dealers because they used the analytics platform to figure out and to show their farmers like, hey, look, this is like you can trust me and listen to what I'm saying, But look at how that seed's performing in FBN across 50,000 acres or 100,000
There you go.
acres.
Yeah.
Top
Yep.
seeds in FBN have 1 million acres on them.
Wow,
awesome.
that's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of that stuff just seems so obvious, but I'm glad you guys have come
Agree.
along and are
Yeah.
taking it head on.
Happy anniversary, 10 years.
10 years,
big
man.
time.
That's wild.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you coming out, man. I'm glad we were able to be just a a small part of this. We've seen you guys for a number of years, and it's super interesting and loving seeing what you're doing. And glad you're in Nebraska, man.
Yeah,
So,
Yeah.
right. Well, no, congrats on everything you guys have been doing, and the business has been fun to support it however we can.
yeah, thank you. So to close it out, just remind folks on the website, farmfocused, FOCUSED.com. You can use the code CommonFolk. You get 20% off of any of the gear there on the site. You can find your favorite followers, guys who Charles knows, the Millennial Farmer, Fast Ag,
He's right
Brian's
there with
farming
us.
videos. There's been a number of them that FBN has worked with over the years, and a lot of those folks are on our website, so you can find their cool merch and the Farm Focus merch and save yourself 20%.
There you go.
All right. Anything else?
That's it. It's
You guys
time
good?
for lunch, right?
Yeah. Let's
All
do
right.
it.
Well, let's close it down. We'll see
Great.
you.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
Peace.
Later.